you never want to get into a place, to use Stephen's language, where we're just doing the linguistic whack-a-mole. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't think that's what's at issue here. I think there are a few things. You all said a bunch of interesting things that I want to that I want to get at. The first thing is, I guess, to Stephen's initial point about my self-emasculation. At the thought, I wasn't melting down, as some on the right have said, because I was afraid that this boogeyman N-word was going to pop out of her mouth and I was going to fall away. That wasn't the point at all. I think you actually characterized it properly, Piers. I was frustrated not at the looming threat of the N-word coming out of her mouth. It was at the spectacle that I felt like in that moment was being created that was wholly unnecessary. And again, I don't think you were doing it intentionally at my expense, but we're all hosts. There's a moment where you got somebody on the ropes, and we know it's a good moment. We know it's a big moment. And getting a white person to say the N-word, it's like A Few Good Men. It's like, did you order, it's a Jack Nicholson moment, right? If you can get them to do that, that's a big moment. And I get that. I guess my point at the time was, it's not the smoking gun that we think. White people don't lie about using the N-word. They lie about not using the N-word. If she already said, I use the N-word in private. So no one pretends to use the N-word when they don't. So I actually didn't think that we needed that confession out of her. For me, as far as the other point here, I don't accept Stephen's analysis here of the donations to the campaign. Even if he is right that people were donating out of some political reaction to our hypersensitivity as a society, that's the wrong person to do it to. Do it to the person that's getting doxxed because they made a mistake 10 years ago. Do it to the person who rapped the N-word, on Gold Digger, and suddenly it has lost their ability to go to college.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Again, I still don't agree with the usage of the N-word regardless. But like, if you're going, like Marc Lamont says, if you're going to use something like that, then, use it where it's actually relevant. If somebody's being outwardly and proudly racist towards an individual, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When there's literally no way you can sugarcoat this. Shido literally just said the N-word to a young black kid and to a grown man. Period. So this GoFundMe is just outing everybody in there as being fucking racist. Period, point blank. It's just racist. Now, again, like Marc Lamont says, if you try to raise funds for the girl who probably got into a bunch of trouble for saying the N-word for Gold Digger from Kanye West, fine. You're fine. You feel like it's too much. You feel like it's bullying. Fine. Okay, it makes sense for you to do it then. But not when it's a open and shut case. Open and closed case, whatever it is. So I agree with that now.
There's all kinds of people who we might say, even if we don't agree fully on the context.
Like, even you go back to the bird watching incident, right? You can even go back to the bird watching incident. I can't remember her fucking name, but I believe she got canned from her job. And the white woman who lost her job as a nurse for getting into a scuffle about an electric bike. One of those electric rental bikes in the city. Why not raise it then? Why not do it then? Why wait till somebody is blatantly racist to do some kind of fucking GoFundMe shit? That's the crazy part about it.
Who we could say, hey, is a better example of the cause. But as you said, Piers, this is somebody who was using the word in the exact context that we're afraid of, or not afraid of, in the exact context that we're frustrated about, in the exact context that we think it's being used in. And so to dump money, almost $800,000 into her coffers, it ultimately rewards her for using that language. Imagine if an arsonist were to set a building on fire, and all three of us agreed that arson should not get the death penalty. I think we probably all agree on that. But if we were to then take $1 million and dump it in their GoFundMe to fund the arsonist's legal defense, and now they get off, is that the right way to do it? Is that the right call? There might be other ways to do it than to fund the person who's done something.
Mr. Crowder has very politely raised his right hand to speak, which I think is a rare example of good manners on this program. So, Stephen, your response.
Well, it's the Canadian. I mean, actually, Dr. Hill and I have go a while back on Fox News. And like I said, he's always been a gentleman. And I do accept I saw him on a podcast later explaining that he didn't know who the guest was going to be. This is after the fact. And I have a much greater understanding now. I also get it. I will say, great, now do stabbing. And I think I know what the answer is going to be. Can we both, if we want to find common ground here, agree that, yeah, we really find ourselves at a weird point in this country when a bunch of people are giving to a lady who yells the N-word at a 5-year-old, and a bunch of people are giving to someone who is famous for no other reason than allegedly stabbing an innocent person? I know that we'll say it's because
Yeah, because we don't know the actual details about the case. This case is not over. The reason that was given to Carmelo is because people do not believe that Carmelo is guilty. Therefore, they are giving, or they raise funds to help him get a better defense team. That's why. The resources, they're getting better resources and access to help better defend himself. Because I believe, me if I'm wrong, but I believe Carmelo's stance is that this was self-defense. That's what people believe. The people who are funding him believe that this was a self-defense, not a murder. That's the difference. The people funding the woman screaming N-word, racist. I don't see how those two are even remotely comparable. We know the motives of the individuals for one, and we know the motives for the individuals for the other. Which one? I don't understand how they're comparable.
Because innocent until proven guilty. But this is the information that we have on both of these scenarios at this point in time. And what I'm discussing is the prescription moving forward. And one final thing. Here's the point that I was making that you didn't show in that clip too, was saying that it's racist for someone to say they would prefer to live in a predominantly white neighborhood, or they would prefer to live in their neighborhood, which is not black, I believe is what they said. And I don't believe it was necessarily her. I believe there was a man on the panel who said that, but you do. And I'm not going to
I'm sorry to keep on this, but it's just real quick. When it comes to that, I think it's more so the phrasing, right? If you want to live in an area where there's less crime, statistically, I'm all for that. That's fine. I get that, right? But when you're saying you want to live in a place where there's less black people, you're assuming that all black people commit crime. That's what that is. You're saying that I want to live with less black people because the more black people, the more crime. That's what you're saying, which is racist and a fucking microaggression. So it's both. It's all in between. It's flat out wrong. Difficult. I don't know how you can defend it. It's so damn wrong. So that's when I hear arguments like that, it's like, are you hearing what you're saying? Do you hear yourself argue right now? I cannot believe that these individuals are just actually able to fucking sit. I don't know. This is just stupid. It's frustrating. Oh shit. My bad.
attribute racism in your heart because only 4% of the population where you're placed in Los Angeles is black. I think we need to stop attributing and imbuing hatred, and I think we need to stop empowering them. But we do find ourselves at a point in this country where neither of these give, send, goes would have blown up if it existed 10 years ago. Why?
What happened 10 years ago? What is he talking about? What happened 10 years ago? What was his shift? What was 10 years ago? 10 years ago, 2025, it's 2015. 10 years ago. What happened in 2015? That's telling him, that's convincing him that this would never. Okay. This is before Colin Kaepernick. 2015 was before Colin Kaepernick made his statement. Ever since Colin Kaepernick made his statement, I'm assuming everything went to shit, although there were systemic issues before. But I guess, go ahead.
How did we get here?
I actually, well, Mark, I'll get you to respond. I have to say, in a way, completely different scenario, but how we got here, I think the same blame can be attached to how we got here to what is going on with the reaction to Joe Biden's health news. I made a point last night on X when that story broke. I was staggered by the instantaneous mockery, abuse, glee, ecstasy, desire for him to die that poured out in response to my tweet revealing this news about him having aggressive advanced stage 4 prostate cancer metastasizing to his bones, which is clearly an incredibly serious situation for a man of his age. And I just made the point, the guy's served his country for 50 years, whatever you think of it, this is the moment just to wish him well, isn't it? The answer was no, and has carried on being no for the next 24 hours in the most stunningly abusive, horrific ghastly manner, totally inhumane to me. And I think the common theme, Stephen, of the two things is social media. Social media has, I think, inflamed social and racial tensions to a point where people just don't think the normal rules of society apply. They can be as disgusting and inhumane and racist and sexist and whatever they want to be as they like, with no accountability in almost every case. And we've become almost neutralized to that kind of thing. And part of the problem is that when people like you and me, and Marc, I'm sure, launch staunch defenses of the right to free speech, the wrong ears take it as the right to be openly racist and all these other things with no accountability. They misunderstand what free speech actually entails. It doesn't mean you're never going to be held accountable for what you say. When Shiloh Hendricks said that she said the N word, whatever, this was her right to free speech. Yeah, but everybody else has a right to hold you accountable for it. And it's the second part of that equation, which is, I think, important. So, Stephen, your response to my thesis.
Yeah. Yes, I disagree. I think social media is a part of it, but I also don't think that we're dealing with an accountability culture as far as the country. I think we're dealing with a false accountability culture as far as the media and those in the establishment. You have myself, for example, who was demonetized, throttled on YouTube for simply using the term lesbi queer, someone who referred to themselves as a lesbi queer. It was a quote. Then moved over to Rumble, and after the Exodus, Diageo, in charge of 80% of the world's advertising, told Rumble that it wasn't enough to demonetize myself, but that they wouldn't spend $1 of advertising on the entire platform, an alternative platform to YouTube, unless I was removed. You've had entire governments try and remove platforms for freedom of speech. This is not the accountability that people in the streets are calling for. What is being called for example, from people in the media, is a lie. They would rather hear a lie than the truth. And so you have people checking out. For example, someone's afraid to say, could be my black neighbors, but it's anecdotal. I'm not supposed to say the black friend thing. Move to the same neighborhood I have because it's safer and there's a stronger sense of community. But if you want me to lie to you and say, I picked that neighborhood and it just so happens to be more mixed or more white, but my neighbor's a former Dallas Cowboy, you can demand a lie, but the media is demanding the lie, not the American people. I am in no way concerned going down to a black neighborhood because I do it to the tune of hours, hundreds of hours of footage and hundreds of millions of views discussing these issues. The challenge I run into is when someone else, a third party, wants to play a game of telephone and tell them that it's racist. You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know that unless I had that conversation with them. Very few people are doing it. You're demanding a lie of people.
Okay, Marc, your response.
Lots of things again. First, I think Stephen is, and I don't assign to you any ill intent, but you're comparing apples and oranges here when we talk about the Carmelo Anthony and the racist woman, I can't think of her name, video.
Lily Gaddis.
I think, as you pointed out,
Shiloh
all day,
Hendricks.
not Lily Gaddis, but
you're talking about Shiloh Hendricks,
yeah. Shiloh Hendricks, yes. When you talk about context, I think we have to look at context in the context even of these GoFundMes, right? The people who are funding Carmelo Anthony, you can tell this from the comments, this isn't my guess, they're not saying good job. They're saying, we don't believe that you're guilty. We don't believe that you've gotten a fair legal process. And so we're sending money to make sure that you get a proper legal defense because we don't believe that you are guilty of this crime. That is what they're saying. Now, you and I may look at the evidence and come to the same conclusion or a different conclusion, but they're not attempting to reward the behavior. They're attempting to challenge a system that they feel like is misrepresenting the behavior. In the case of the N-word and this woman, right, Shiloh, what's happening is quite different. They're not saying, hey, we feel like she's taken such a loss from her free exercise of free speech that we want to reimburse her for that. That would be a different argument. I still wouldn't want to do it, but that would at least be logically and morally consistent. When you look in the comments and when you talk to people who are funding that campaign, they are literally shouting the N-word. They are literally echoing the racial epithet. And that is different. That's why I say if this is really going to be a First Amendment cause, again, and not the lie that you're talking about, then let's invest in actual First Amendment causes and not this. And to your second point, I agree, and then I got you wholeheartedly. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making decisions about where you want to live. But there's a huge difference between saying, I want to live in a statistically safe neighborhood or I want to live in a historically safe neighborhood, and I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances. And again, the latter is what came out in our conversation on the show the last time. And we're melding those two things as if they are the same, and then acting as if there's just no room for a white person or a black person for that matter to exercise any radical honesty about where they want to live. I ain't met a person yet that doesn't want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I also want to live around black people. People can make their own choices, but let's not pretend they're the same thing.
Okay, we've got to end it there. Yeah. I would say, in answer to your question, Stephen, I would say in both the GoFundMe cases, I think it's wrong. I think the
stabbing is worse than a word.
I think the intentions on both sides are actually malevolent and wrong. They're not doing it out of any.
Piers didn't listen to anything that was just said. How can you come up with that conclusion after it was clearly explained why one was done? It was clearly explained why each fundraisers were created. That's it.
Great sense of social justice.
I feel like he tuned out.
Sort of thing. They're doing it because they're taking a side based on skin color in both those stories, I think. So I think...
Okay, wait, no. That's not what happened with Carmelo Anthony. That's not what happened with Carmelo Anthony. This is simply a case of, it's not about skin color. They don't believe that he did the crime. They believe that it was self-defense. That's what they believe. That's why they're creating, this is why they have a GoFundMe, because they don't believe this. There's plenty of stories where people's like, I don't believe that this happened to this individual. We don't believe that they were represented well. So let's raise a fund. Let's get some money together so this person can get better defended. That's what that was. It has nothing to do with skin color. The only people making it about race is the white people in the room. The only people.
Murder is worse than yelling.
Yeah, listen.
I think.
You know, allegedly stabbing someone to death is worse than
getting
using an ugly
railroaded
word.
is a worse outcome than getting held accountable for using the N-word.
Yeah, but it's all about the
framing.
But Stephen's point is that one is worse than the other.
I don't think we can end this on this, Pierce. I can take 30 seconds here. If we're talking about
right,
accountability, like I said, there's false accountability.
So are you against catch and release? That framing suggests that the money is going for the behavior.
Are you against the discount under $1,000 or less where a shopkeeper has to close down because of the name of systemic restorative justice? Are you against cash and release? Are you against cash bail? Are you against the idea that people can shoplift and not be held accountable for their actions? Let's talk real accountability.
Wait, I thought shoplifting was illegal.
Accountability for actions and not false accountability for words. I believe that stabbing someone is worse than saying a word. Both are bad. Me, Mr. Traditional.
You know what?
Okay. Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that.
Quickly.
Because again, that is a disingenuous framing. No one is arguing that stabbing someone is better than using the word. My point is our response as a community to the stabbing is not to say, great job. Our response is, this was awful, but let's find out what really happened. No one is saying on the other side of this issue that N-word thing is awful, but let's hold this woman accountable, but let's not go too far. And if they are, I'm okay with that. But it's not apples and oranges. No one is saying what that woman did is worse than that kid getting stabbed. They're saying that the story of the stabbing hasn't been told well or properly, and we want justice for everybody. And to answer your cash bail, yes, I'm against cash bail, but I don't believe I don't believe that's the only way to hold people accountable. You can hold people accountable without cash bail.
I've got to leave it there, not least, Mark, because I'm worried about what you're doing to your ear at the moment. There's clearly an issue, a malfunction.
My microphone fell out.
And there's something, it looks like you're basically gouging your own ear out in horror of what's happening on screen.
Oh, come
which
on.
I know is not what you're doing, but it's a worrying optic for the viewers. Guys, I really enjoyed that debate. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent.
Yeah, I think with it, when that case is what the hell? What's that? Oh, I feel like when it comes to that case, so far what I know is that we're talking about the GoFundMes. It looks like one of the GoFundMes were made because of for Carmelo Anthony. They don't believe what's being said in that case or in this story to be true. They are raising that money so that there can be better defense for Carmelo Anthony. That's what I'm understanding. And the other part, the GoFundMe raised for Shiloh Hendricks is completely different. The GoFundMe there was the funder because of her usage or her being held accountable for using the N-word, calling a 5-year-old kid the N-word, calling another person the N-word. They're raising that money at the same time in the comment sections, celebrating the fact that, or saying that, yeah, we're tired, we should be able to say whatever you want to, you go girl, you do this. You should never ever allow anybody from stopping you from being racist. That's what I'm getting out of that. Those are two different scenarios. I don't necessarily understand why Steven doesn't understand that. I don't know why Piers Morgan ended it the way he did, saying that they were both reprehensible or what have you. But there's a complete difference, in my opinion. So I honestly, again, when it comes to race, when it comes to racism, this is something that I think that we need better. I think there needs to be more education. People want to be open-minded. I think people need to start being open-minded. Can cancel culture, is it problematic? Possibly. Sometimes I look at when people are getting canceled and I think to myself, I don't think that they need to be canceled. I think that they need to be educated, because there are instances where people who aren't educated say stupid shit. However, when you're refusing to listen to a marginalized group when they tell you this is harmful, but you're doing it anyway because you want to have some fun, you want to sing a song is worth that. If you know something is wrong, but you want to say a song and you know you're being recorded, and you know by saying that word it's going to be harmful, it might have consequences, you know this, you can't be surprised by the outcome. You can't be surprised that people are now coming at you because of the harm that you caused. That's my problem. And I honestly feel like once people start to learn critical thinking, then I believe that's when we'll probably be better off in this fucking space, in this fucking world. Anyways, that's all I got. Been on for too long. I am going to give me something to eat, but for whoever showed up today, thank you for showing up, and I'll be on tomorrow.